this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Happy Thanksgiving. And even though we're still more than a month away from when you might need to start making any New Year's resolutions, we're going to dip into our archives right now for a show that brings you a conversation about Ozempic, Mounjaro, and other similar drugs that Americans have been using more and more for weight loss. Back when we originally aired this conversation in January, these drugs, all part of the umbrella of GLP-1s, were just getting out of the phase of designer drug. In fact, at the Oscars last year, host Jimmy Kimmel even joked about them being used among the rich and famous.
Everybody looks so great. When I look around this room, I can't help but wonder, is Ozempic right for me?
Since then, GLP-1s like Ozempic have exploded in popularity and have broken into the mainstream as a much more common treatment for obesity. A Kaiser Family Foundation poll from earlier this year found that more than 15 million people currently have a prescription for a GLP-1 drug, and that 1 in 8 adults had used the drug at least once. We've also seen stories about gyms across the country reporting a downtick in membership because many customers are saying these drugs are doing the job a lot better than an hour on the treadmill can. But GLP-1s were designed as treatments for diabetes, not necessarily weight loss. And the high demand has led to shortages, which is especially difficult for people who actually need them to treat serious health problems. But one thing is certain, GLP-1 drugs have completely changed the conversation about health and weight loss in America, and they're likely here to stay. So this hour, we're asking listeners, what do you think of these medications like Ozempic, Mounjaro, and Wegovy? Are you using them for weight loss? Is this a revolution for weight loss or just another fad? Let's meet our panel. Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford practices obesity medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital and is a professor at Harvard University. And Dr. Disha Narang is director of obesity medicine at Endeavor Health in Chicago. Welcome to both of you to The Middle.
Thank you for having me. It's a delight to be here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, before we get to the phones, let's start with the basics. Most of these drugs are slightly different from one another, but they all seem to have the same effect, which is pretty rapid weight loss, like 15 or 20% of body fat in some cases in a year. Dr. Stanford, how did they work briefly?
Yeah, well, actually, I want to just kind of get rid of a little few myths that we've kind of stated at the outset of the show. They actually are the same drug. So semaglutide is the agent that is exactly the same drug. Ozempic and Wegovy, they're identical drug. They're the exact same drug. So it's the exact same compound. These are what we call GLP-1 receptor agonists. And I know that's some fancy language that we have to throw out there, but that's exactly what they are. They're called glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonists. And they really work on the brain and the gut. They work to upregulate a part of the brain that tells us to eat less, and they work to really help us store less adipose or fat. So they do work in the brain and the gut to really regulate how our brains think and how we store fat. There's a lot of complicated science behind how they work, but it's really important to recognize that in our bodies already produce GLP-1. A lot of people don't know that in our bodies, we already produce GLP-1 within our gut. Some of us produce more of it than others. So for those of us that produce more of it, we already have in our bodies this ability to regulate how our bodies, have this sense of satiety, this sense of fullness, better than those of us that don't produce as much of it. So I just want to kind of throw that out there. Right now, the FDA has approved Ozempic for the purpose of treating diabetes. And
right?
Wegovy for treating obesity. And then
even though they're exactly the same thing, you say they're exactly the same thing.
Exact drug, the exact identical, exact same drug. And then for Mounjaro, that's a dual agonist that has kind of two different types of things in it. The GLP-1 we just talked about, and something called a GIP. That's a glucose insulinotropic polypeptide. Say that 5 times fast. And it's a dual agonist. And it's a little bit of a, kind of a step above what we see in that kind of single agent. That's the Mounjaro that you talked about, but it was approved by the FDA on November 8th for the treatment of patients with obesity under the trade name of Zepbound. So that is the same agent, Mounjaro and Zepbound, same drug, approved by the FDA initially to treat diabetes, then approved to treat patients with obesity. I don't like this idea of us taking one drug from one population to treat another population, because many of the patients that have type 2 diabetes also happen to have obesity. Actually 80% of patients that have type 2 diabetes also have obesity. So we're not necessarily taking one from another to treat another population. Both patients, or both sets of patients actually have
a need for it. You're right.
Yeah, it's not that one is better or worse than the other. I think both warrant treatment. And so I don't like for us to think of it that way. And so I really want to kind of get rid of that dimorphism.
Right.
So I just want to throw those things out there, and I'll be quiet after saying
I'll just bring Dr. Narang in. Do you think that these drugs are as revolutionary as so many people think, or are they comparable to any other existing weight loss tool?
So these are amazing resources, and it has really changed the landscape of weight management, right? So as weight management specialists, we have had medications in the past approved for weight management, right, and weight loss. However, these medications in the trials have shown upwards of 20% or more weight loss in the groups that have been on the highest doses. So truly, yes, this has really changed the landscape of medical weight management. However, within this whole conversation about, these revolutionary medications, we really need to emphasize that these are, at the end of the day, resources for weight loss, right? So in the trials, patients went through rigorous lifestyle changes in addition to taking these medications in order to achieve that long-term weight loss. So, just from a clinical standpoint, I have had patients on these medications who have not lost weight. I've also had patients on these medications who have changed their lives and lost a very significant amount of weight. And, their entire life is different than it was a few years ago. And so, we don't necessarily need to tout these medications as magic bullets or revolutionary things. However, yes, they're excellent resources, and we're excited to have them as a resource, but they're not a magic bullet.
Well, but anybody who has tried to lose weight for their whole life and then suddenly does with one of these drugs probably does feel like it's a bit of a magic bullet. We have a lot of people calling in on the phones. Let's get to one of them. Wes is calling from Sauk Center, Minnesota. Wes, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Yes, so I take Ozempic myself, and I have for 3 years. And my doctor had encouraged me to take it against, what I wanted to do. But I started taking it. I was sick for about 6 to 8 months, just with, you throw up, you have terrible bowel movements, and you kind of get through it. But you learn what you can eat and what you can't eat, and it changes your mind on what you put in your body. Just because you don't want to be sick. But I lost about 120 pounds after taking Ozempic. Yeah, and changed my life. I mean, I had to buy 3 wardrobes because I lost so much weight. And, it changed my appetite. It changed my mood. I came off of all my blood pressure meds.
Wow.
I came off of I was on like 9 meds, and I got down to 3.
And Wes, do you think that you're going to take it for the rest of your life, or do you think you'll eventually wean yourself off of it?
I think I would, honestly, the way it's changed my mind as far as what I eat and how I eat, it's mentally made me think about, wow, I used to eat a lot of this. I don't anymore because I don't want to be sick. But, the biggest problem I run into now is I can come off of it. I mean, I know what my body needs. I know how I feel. I don't have chronic foot pain. I can run. I can run upstairs.
Wow.
It's crazy to think that a drug could do that. And it's very, and I listened to your show, that it's very upsetting to see like these celebrities have Ozempic parties.
Why?
Because they run out. There's such a short supply. I've had to wait a month before, quite a few times to get the medication and the dose I need. And, then I have to start over again, and I get sick for a few months again because, not because of what I'm eating, but just because my body's trying to readjust again.
Right.
And so when you see these celebrities and people misusing it.
Let me take that to the panel. Thank you so much for the call. Dr. Stanford, he brought up a couple of points I want to get to. Let's start with one of them, the side effects. There are some people have been reporting, some of the things that Wes was talking about there.
Yeah, so the key side effects from these medications, number one is the one that he brought up, which is nausea. So 40 to 45% of patients will experience nausea on these medications, and it's usually a dose effect. So you titrate up on the doses of these medicines. If you're looking at semaglutide, there are 5 key doses for semaglutide: 0.25 milligrams, 0.5 milligrams, 1 milligram, 1.7, and then 2.4 milligrams. What he mentioned to you at the very end of his call was that if he misses a dose or is missing several doses, he needs to restart and retitrate up the dosing of what he's saying is, and so then he has to kind of restart his plan, and then that he has to go back up the dosing titration, which then makes him have to go back through his body getting adjusted to the medication. So he brought up some really key points there. So nausea is by far the number one side effect, and he brought that up as a key side effect. He talked about diarrhea. Constipation is a key side effect. And so he thought about these things. These are really the GI side effects are the key side effects that we hear from these medications. And that's what we saw in the trials.
Well,
Disha brought this up
we'll
from
see
the
if
trials.
We'll see if other listeners bring that up as well.
Yeah.
I want to just remind our listeners, we are available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Jeremy, one industry that might be more than a bit scared of these drugs is the weight loss industry. Weight Watchers has been around for 60 years. Wow. Here's an ad from the 1980s.
Surprise, Jessica, I'm home!
It's not what it looks like.
Looks like lasagna to me. I thought we were on a diet.
We still are.
Weight Watchers? Jessica, don't try to fool me.
Finally, 19 new meals that are so much saucier, so much chunkier, and so much zestier, you won't believe they're Weight Watchers.
Well, if you can't beat them, join them, I suppose. Rather than trying to compete with Ozempic and Wegovy and Mounjaro, Weight Watchers is now offering special plans for people on the drugs and even bought a telehealth company to prescribe the drugs themselves. Don't go anywhere. More ahead on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I actually drop better when I'm high. It heightens my senses, calms me down. If anything, I'm more careful. Honestly, it just helps me focus.
That's probably what the driver who killed a 4-year-old told himself. And now he's in prison. You see, no matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious Black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's Place, Black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they were just dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place, a story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, politically, geographically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're talking about the rise in popularity of GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, Mounjaro, and Wegovy, and what kind of impact they've had on the people who've been taking them. They've become massively popular for weight loss, but were designed as treatments for diabetes. And in the past year, we've seen them completely transform the discussion surrounding health and wellness. This program was previously recorded, so we're not taking any more live calls, but you can leave us a message at 844-4MIDDLE. We're joined this hour by Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford, an obesity physician at Massachusetts General Hospital, and Dr. Disha Narang, Director of Obesity Medicine at Endeavor Health in Chicago. I continued our conversation by asking Dr. Narang about a criticism I've read about these weight loss drugs, which is that people who've been trying their whole lives to lose weight and not feel shame about their bodies now feel like a whole movement toward body positivity has been upended.
Yeah, I think one of the things is that anyone who may be coming into Dr. Stanford's clinic or mine, they've probably been shamed for decades at that point for their weight, right? And so to have a resource to be able to treat that is immense, right? And so one thing is that obesity nationally is seen, or just worldwide, is seen as a disease of vanity, that it's your fault or it was your willpower that caused you to be at this certain weight. But that's not true. Obesity and weight gain, weight loss, it's very much a neurohormonally mediated disease. So your hormones talk to your brain, talk to your gut. They determine how full or hungry you are, and your environment. And that means, the food around you, where you live, what your access to food might be, may exacerbate that or may not affect that. And so that's the environment that we live in. That's the disease of obesity. And so when we add these medications in, what Dr. Stanford was saying earlier, the medication works, the GLP-1 agonist, when we add the GIP on, it works to suppress the hunger hormone. So it shuts off the noise in your head to, have those cravings for food. So when someone is on these medications and loses that weight, it's like one of those things where, people are judged for being at a certain weight, then they're judged for being on medication to lose that weight. And I want to kind of turn that conversation to say that, well, no one's judging you for having heart disease or taking medication for that. We aren't, judging people for being on a cholesterol or blood pressure medication. Right. This is no different. And so, it's great to have that body positivity, but I feel like a lot of my patients who are on these medications feel like they can't win because they've been judged either way.
Well, and by the way, the number one prescribed medication in America is atorvastatin, which is a cholesterol medication that so many people take, including me. Let's go to the phones. Diana in Michigan is with us. Diana, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hi there.
Hi, go ahead with your comment.
Hi. So, and I apologize, you caught me right as bedtime is nearing. So I have started taking, I sought out Mounjaro as a way to sort of combat fertility treatment. I have insulin-resistant PCOS, and I continued to hear from doctors that if I would just lose weight, that maybe I could get pregnant in a second pregnancy. And so I sought out Ozempic, and my doctor said, why don't we try Mounjaro instead as a better option? And it's been a complete game changer for me. So I think it's really important to look at the hormonal and fertility aspect of these drugs, and it's not something everybody's talking about.
Diana, thank you for that call. Dr. Stanford, your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for calling in. I think this is a very important, overlooked issue. I've published widely on this issue. I think a lot of the fertility conversation is missing this issue. The issue with hormone imbalance and how it's impacting fertility treatment, and how many of our fertility docs are really not trained to look at this issue of hormone imbalance and how this can be impacting infertility with either first or second or even third or however many pregnancies that we're looking at, and how this can play a major role. And I thank her for calling in and bringing up this important issue that is very much overlooked. Like I said, I've published on this. I find that about a third of my female patients that are of reproductive age are coming in with this exact issue, many of whom I am trying on medications, whether it be semaglutide, whether it be tirzepatide, or other of our more historic agents that I've utilized. And I've gotten significant success among these, using these medications and helping them to achieve pregnancy in the midst of being told that this was really an impossible feat. So I thank her so much for sharing her story, being brave enough to share this story. I think it's an important, overlooked conversation in the fertility world. And like I said, I just want to thank her for sharing her story.
Especially as the kids were crying in the background.
Yes, they were. She was brave in that sense too. Yeah. So brave all around. Thanks so much for sharing your story.
Anthony is with us from Atlanta, Georgia. Anthony, go ahead. Welcome to The Middle.
Hey, thank you. So yes, I just started taking Ozempic in October. Prior to that, I was on the highest dosage of metformin. Had never, was not seeing results. My last A1C, I had dropped 3 or 4 points within a 3 or 4 month period. So it's been a game changer for me. I'm 39, active, and just a combination of exercising and strength training has helped tremendously.
So you've been taking it in collaboration with also an exercise routine that's helpful.
Absolutely. I play tennis, work out at a gym, and so I think for me, I feel like I'm doubling the results. With my A1C reducing. I go back to the doctor next month, and we're going to see if we need to reduce the dosage since it's working so well in my body.
Anthony, thank you for that call. Let's get to another one. Will is with us from Houston. Will, go ahead. Welcome to The Middle.
Hi, good to be on. Love the show.
Thank you.
So my point is basically a little bit personal, but I've been on ADHD meds for the majority of my life. And with ADHD meds, it really suppresses your hunger. And I haven't had the best relationship with food. I was not trouble losing weight, but gaining weight. And, with that in mind, I don't think relying upon pills to gain or lose weight is a healthy way at all. I think it's a tool, and by all means, you can use tools to your advantage. But if you're relying upon a wonder drug to help you lose all this weight, it's not going to last. And lately getting off of ADHD meds and being able to regain a healthy relationship with food has been really helpful in gaining muscle and gaining healthy weight. And that's really my point that I wanted to make, is it's a tool, not a crutch.
I appreciate your comment. Dr. Narang, let me go to you on that. What about that view? I'm sure you've heard it before.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with you. I think that it is a tool. And as I said earlier, that it's an excellent resource, but it is not the magic bullet. And so, the caller before that, is doing a regimented exercise program, has an entire lifestyle built around this. That's where you tend to see success. So, of course, there's camps where people say, you only do lifestyle modifications. The other camps may just, rely on medication. Well, we truly see long-term success when we marry the two. When we marry lifestyle, and medication together, that's where we see long-term success. However, yes, I agree that we cannot be using this as a crutch. And especially in this setting of medication shortages and insurance denials, we don't have, readily available medication for folks every single month. I wish we did. We do not. And this is also not a treatment for eating disorders. And this is exactly where long-term weight management becomes essential. We cannot just dole out the medication like candy. There's a lot of counseling that goes into it. And, someone is struggling with an eating disorder, whether that might be restrictive or, the opposite. We really need to be able to make sure, is this patient a good candidate for medication to lose weight? Is it going to trigger the eating disorder? My bigger concern is that, are you going to continue to have a positive relationship with food? Because it really does come down to, we need to make sure that we have a healthy relationship with food. And because think about the next 25 years of your life, right? Like, we have to make sure that this is not, a temporary fix. And so that's where it really comes down to the food environment and how we're thinking about, day to day what we're eating.
Yeah.
Tolliver, we're getting some comments in online at listentothemiddle.com.
Yeah, Christy in Hazlitt, Michigan says, as a pharmacist, I see people struggling with weight and always looking for the quick fix. These new drugs are working for people and getting a lot of good press. They do work. However, I hear from my patients that as soon as they can't get the medication, their former appetite and former habits come right back. I'm not sure we have made it clear that these are lifelong meds and not the quick fix they are seeing in the media. Bottom line, if I thought it was the magic bullet, I'd be using it since I'm 200 plus pounds.
Dr. Stanford, what about that these are drugs you'd have to take your whole life?
That is absolutely true. These are a lifetime commitment. I tell my patients whenever they're starting any medication that we're using to treat the chronic disease that is obesity, if they do work, and notice I said if they do work, if you are a responder, this is a lifetime commitment to these medications. For many of my patients, they've been with me for at least 10 years. So this isn't a short-term commitment. If you're looking for something that you're going to just breeze on by, start it, stop it, and hope that everything is going to be solved, you have picked the wrong thing. This is not something that you're going to just start and stop. Like I said, people have been with me for 10, 15, 20 plus years, and they're looking, this is going to be a long-term commitment. If they work, you do need to be on these for the rest of your life.
So you've had patients that they don't work for?
If they don't work, then we need to pick another agent, something that works in a different pathway of the brain, or maybe even look at other types of treatments. Metabolic and bariatric surgery is still the best treatment that we have available, particularly for those with moderate to severe obesity. And for many of my patients, they're in combination therapy. What do I mean by that? They have undergone bariatric surgery, they're on medications, they're doing lifestyle modifications, they're working with psychiatrists and psychologists. They're truly using all of the forms of therapy available for them to get the best possible outcome.
Let's go back to the phones. Beth is with us from Nashville, Tennessee. Beth, welcome to the middle. How is Ozempic working for you, or one of the drugs like it?
Well, I took Ozempic for 18 months through a program at my work. And for me, it was really kind of the brain piece that I was not expecting. And I learned that semaglutide goes through the blood-brain barrier. But as someone who all my life has, I would secret eat and I binge ate. And I know one of the doctors mentioned about eating disorders, and this not necessarily being a great treatment for it. But for the first time in my life, within a couple of weeks of starting Ozempic, I felt like I understood what the majority of the population feels like about food. I wasn't, that food noise and food chatter was not always in my head, and I was not just constantly trying to think of, what food's going to be available, and is it food I'm going to want to eat in front of people, and am I going to want to eat before or after, and is there going to be enough food or not enough, and not even just like craving things, but just having a healthy outlook on eating, or, going to a restaurant and thinking about what everyone else is going to order, and just feeling full. That was something I had never really even experienced. I was like a bottomless pit. And when I started taking the Ozempic, it was like, oh, I don't have to eat the entirety of that. I can have a stopping point. And I just wasn't expecting that brain piece to come into play so quickly.
Beth, let me ask you one question, which is, when you were taking it, when you started taking Ozempic, did you tell other people that you were taking it? Because I've read a lot of people who've been taking it, they feel a little uncomfortable about talking about taking it.
Yeah, so I had several friends who were in the same work weight loss program that we were in at the same time, but there were people, even like close friends and relatives, who I still have never told, because they have said in the past, well, if you wanted to lose weight, you just, exercise and eat some spinach and stop, having junk food or whatever. And for me, it wasn't even just a weight loss. Like my body image issues still exist. Like we were talking about the body movement, but it was that brain piece for me. But for people who've never experienced that brain piece, they don't understand where I'm coming from.
Right. Well, let me take your comment to Dr. Narang. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if it was as easy as eating some salad and losing weight, we would have all been able to do that, right? As of 2030, 50% of our population is predicted to have obesity. So this is not just about the fact that you may not have eaten enough salad in the last, however many decades of your life. This goes way, way beyond that. And, as I said earlier, it's not a question of willpower. This is very much our brain chemistry. This is very much, the genetics we were dealt. And part of it is, we can't change our genetics, but we can change the environment around us. We can be on, therapeutic medications that can alter part of that interaction of hormones between our brain and our gut. And that's the situation that we're in right now, right? And I think people, like she was mentioning, those who may not necessarily understand that chatter going on in the brain, those people finally feel seen, because they have a resource to actually calm that chatter down, and that's why, these medications are remarkable, because for the first time in probably, decades of dealing with this, they have something that can help them, right? And I'm telling you, everyone who may have come into my clinic, they've tried every diet in the book, right? There is not a diet they have not tried. So that it's not a question of eating more greens.
Well, but just as it's not a question of eating more greens, and you mentioned the amount of people that may be obese, almost 3/4 of adults older than 20 in the U.S. are already living with obesity or are overweight. Dr. Stanford, there are probably some listeners saying to themselves, what about the food industry? Is this just a way to counteract the kinds of things that the food industry markets to us and has for decades?
Well, I mean, I definitely think the food industry plays a role, but I think that we make it just about the food industry, and it's so much more complex than that. When it's about our sleep quality and duration, it's about other issues that play a large role. I mean, let's look at how our environment has changed over the last 50 years. Let's look at the on-demand ability to get food at any time, at any hour, at any minute of any day. That's part of it. But let's look at how our circadian rhythms have changed. Just the timing of when we eat plays a large role. Those things play a large role. Medications that we take play a large role in how much we weigh. Do you know that 20% of our obesity has to do with medications that we take for other issues? Did you know that 20% of obesity is caused by other medications? What medications cause obesity? Medications like beta blockers, lithium, Depakote, medications that are antipsychotics, insulin, these medications that we have to take for other issues that lead to weight gain. We can't not take those medications, but guess what? They cause weight gain. So there's a lot of other issues that lead to obesity.
All right, well, stand by. A reminder that The Middle is also available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. Tolliver, I have to say, when I first heard about Ozempic, I thought of Fen-Phen, which was a hit weight loss drug in the 90s, called a miracle drug at the time.
Yep, until it turned into a nightmare. Listen to this 1997 clip from the Fox affiliate in my home city of Chicago.
The first Illinois lawsuit's been filed against the makers of Fen-Phen. A Chicago law firm filed a class action suit today. It comes after the Food and Drug Administration last week urged the recall of Fen-Phen because of studies that link it to heart problems.
By the way, the drug combination that made Fen-Phen was never approved by the FDA, whereas the drugs we're talking about today have been. Stay with us. More of The Middle coming up.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world. The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I actually drop better when I'm high. It heightens my senses, calms me down. If anything, I'm more careful. Honestly, it just helps me focus.
That's probably what the driver who killed a 4-year-old told himself. And now he's in prison. You see, no matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's place, black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place. A story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, politically, geographically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're talking about the rise in popularity of GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, Mounjaro, and Wegovy, and what kind of impact they've made on the people who have been taking them. They've become very popular for weight loss, but were designed as treatments for diabetes, and in the past year, we've seen them completely transform the discussion surrounding health and wellness. This program was previously recorded, so we're not taking any more live calls, but you can leave us a message at 844-4MIDDLE, or you can reach out at listentothemiddle.com. We're joined this hour by Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford, an obesity physician at Massachusetts General Hospital, and Dr. Disha Narang, Director of Obesity Medicine at Endeavor Health in Chicago. I continued our conversation by asking Dr. Narang about the cost of these drugs. If it's not covered by insurance, it's around $1,000 a month, and Medicare doesn't cover it. So for most, it is cost prohibitive. Here's what she had to say.
I think one of the things is that there are more agents in the pipeline coming out. So I do think that potentially having multiple agents that are as powerful as, the current agents that we have may help to decrease the prices. That's just conjecture, though. We do have coupons available, for all of these medications. However, even after the coupons, they are quite pricey. So in the near future, unfortunately, I do not see the price coming down.
Dr. Stanford, the other thing I'm wondering about and we've heard about is that Ozempic, what it does for cravings, addictions, and desires goes beyond hunger. Can it be used for, alcoholism or impulse shopping even?
So those studies are being now conducted by the NIH. So the data is still very preliminary. There are some people that will anecdotally say that, I do feel that I'm not having those strong alcohol, cravings that I've had before. I've had some patients, although just a few that say that I no longer have those issues. But the data is very scarce. And so I would be a little bit cautious in terms of making these really sweeping statements to say that those are what we're getting from these drugs. Although there are some patients that would tell you that definitively they've seen major shifts in those. One thing that I do want to add, however, to what Dr. Narang stated earlier, is that one of the drugs that is a GLP-1 that's a daily injection, that was the first drug approved that was a GLP-1, that's liraglutide. That was Victoza, which was the one treat diabetes, and Saxenda. That is set to come off patent in 2024. So when that does come off patent, that will be a generic drug, which will be available to the public. Now, on average, the weight loss is significantly less, but it still works in the same pathways of the brain and was quite effective for many patients and still quite effective for several patients. So that will improve some of the equity issues that we've seen and access issues when that comes off patent this year. And so I do think that that will help improve some of the equity and access issues when that comes off patent in 2024 this year.
Let's go back to the phone. Sarah is joining us from Pennsylvania. Sarah, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I caught this show accidentally, and it has been so informative and great to hear. So thank you.
Thank you.
I heard one of the callers, a gentleman, talking about how he's been on the medication for ADD or ADHD, and his statement kind of challenged me about, we're looking for the weight loss, the magic bullet, the magic pill here. And I think that's the biggest thing, one of the biggest things that gets me with this. I too have taken Adderall for my ADD over the years. I've taken phentermine. I actually took Fen-Phen before it was banned for a short time, which helped me, and I was able to be off of it for a number of years. And then I did revisit phentermine itself years ago, and it actually helped me more with my ADD than the weight loss. So that was interesting. And then here comes Wegovy, and I started that earlier this year. And the mental component, the brain component, like one of the other callers mentioned, it is amazing what it does, and it's hard to put to words. And I just wish that people would understand that nobody goes into the store and says, you know what, I'll take a box of ADD, actually give me a double dose, and while you're at it, why don't you add some obesity to it and make that a triple dose? Nobody wants any of this. Nobody's looking for an easy way out. It's exactly like the doctor said, that there's no judgments because you're taking medication for your heart or insulin, or because of whatever. So it just really, I guess, struck my nerve when he was like, hey, change your lifestyle. I've done everything, like has been mentioned on the show. I've done the lifestyle change. I've done the eating change, and I still gain weight. And being a bottomless pit of hungry all the time, to the point of being physically sick, is mind-blowing of like, what is going on with my body? And the Wegovy, it is a game changer. And it was just like, whatever it did to the mentalness, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, because I know what phentermine does.
Well, Sarah,
we've
got it. Let me take it to our panel. Dr. Narang, why is there such judgment about not just weight, but about people trying to lose the weight?
Yeah, so going back to my earlier comment, obesity is seen as a disease of vanity. It is seen as a disease that was your fault because you ate too much or whatever the situation may have been, that it was your fault. We need to turn this conversation around. This is a chronic disease. We're not seeing this conversation around blood pressure, cholesterol, heart disease, diabetes, sleep apnea, joint disease. All of these are actually complications of obesity. And so this conversation needs to change. Even our insurance companies, deny these medications left and right, or if someone didn't lose enough weight on the medication, they'll stop coverage for the medication. Well, they're putting blame on the patient. They're making this disease their fault. And this is precisely why we need to treat this as a long-term chronic illness that needs to be treated long-term with the medication potentially. And so this is exactly, what this caller was saying. She's tried all these medications, and, this finally worked for her. That mental chatter came down. She's doing well on it. Well, that's what we want to see, right? Because when we do well on it, then all these other things get better. Our diabetes, blood pressure, cholesterol, heart disease, sleep apnea, joint disease, risk of cancer, like you name it, right? All of these things get better. So we need to change this conversation.
Let's go to Nick, who's calling from Michigan. Nick, welcome to The Middle.
Oh, hello. My question to your panel was, I was just actually at my doctor recently, and he was commenting that they were seeing, or maybe in the lab animal aspect of when they test drugs, that they were seeing increased rates of thyroid cancer. But I don't know that necessarily translated to the human, trials. And now that it's been on market, if we've seen an uptick in instances of thyroid cancer.
Well, let me take that to Dr. Stanford. Have you heard about that?
So I think that what he's saying is that some of the earlier trial, particularly in the rat models, did show a slight increase in thyroid cancer. We haven't really seen this translate into the human models, and so I appreciate Nick for bringing this to the attention. So there has been some fear associated with this, but long-term studies have not seen this translate into human studies. And what I want to also let the caller, the people that are listening to the show know that GLP-1s have been on the market here in the United States for almost 20 years. So we have almost 20 years of data to look at with regards to the GLP-1s. And we just really haven't seen that play out in the almost 20 years of data that we've seen in terms of thyroid disease. There was one study that was conducted in Europe that showed a slight increase in the European population with regards to thyroid disease. In one study that was conducted there, we have not seen that bore out in the American population. So I have not been cautious in that way within my patient population. I have treated over 3,000 patients with GLP-1s in my own personal patient population. And so I can tell you that I'm always very cautious of thinking about this. I will say a contraindication to use of this medication, if you have a personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer, you cannot use this medication. This is completely a contraindication to use, or any patient that has a history of multiple endocrine neoplasia type 2, complete contraindication to the use of these medications. So those patient populations completely excluded from the use of medication, but thanks so much for calling in with that concern.
Let's go to Eva, who's in the Chicago area. Hi, Eva. Welcome to The Middle.
Hi. I was beginning to lose hope.
Your prayers have been answered. Go ahead.
Yes. I've never had weight problems. I'm blessed, I guess. My daughter, however, was born thin, was thin through school and through high school, went away to college and started gaining weight, and then gaining more and more and more and more. And she was clinically obese, which of course worries her mother, but I wasn't allowed to talk about it or ask her a question because then I would be fat shaming her. So all I could do is bite my lips and hope. She has used the medication and lost almost 100 pounds.
Wow.
And it's like, oh my God, that's the person, I saw growing up. And it's wonderful, but I have three concerns. Number one, there was no research being done for weight control for the medication because it was for diabetics. Is research going on now? Number two, are people who are taking it for weight control taking a higher dosage or different dosage when people are taking it for diabetes? And number three, do we have any idea of what happens when people stop taking it?
Okay,
because
those are
all of my life we've been.
Yeah, those are great questions. Let me take that to our panel. Dr. Narang, do you have answers to those questions?
Yes. So the answer to the first question, whether there has been research on long-term weight management, I think that was the question. We have research. And so with semaglutide, we're seeing about 20%, give or take, at the highest dose. With tirzepatide, we're seeing even more than that, up to 25% in patients who have taken it for over a year. And so we do have actually data to support, long-term weight maintenance and weight loss.
Right.
Now, remind me of the other.
Do people have to take a higher dose if they're using it for weight loss?
Well, so the way that the medications have been dosed, so semaglutide for diabetes goes up to 2 milligrams. Semaglutide that is indicated for weight management goes up to 2.4 milligrams. So there's not too much of a difference, but it's a very slight difference. For tirzepatide, for both diabetes management and weight management, it's the exact same dosing. And so, when these studies were done, there were studies done for people who have obesity without diabetes, and there are separate studies for patients who do have diabetes. So we actually have very concrete data on this. And as Dr. Stanford said, we have 20 years almost experience with these sorts of agents. And so for long-term management, now, we have ongoing trials to understand if we go down on the dose, do we maintain our weight? If we come off of the dose, though, especially anecdotally, patients do, regain some of that appetite, some of that food noise, and some of that weight. And so when we say that obesity is a chronic disease, we're expecting patients to be on these medications long-term.
Right.
And so the trade-off is that hopefully, your diabetes and blood pressure issues, cholesterol issues, those all get better. So hopefully you do get to come off of other medications as a trade-off.
Let's get in another call here. Weston is joining us from Boise, Idaho. Weston, go ahead.
Hey there. I guess to give my thesis, I think we're starting to. Sorry, I'm actually a little out of breath because I got the jab. My thesis is ultimately that we're trying to address a broken food system with pills. And the reason I say that is that our food system's designed to be addictive, at least the commercialized food system. So people from a very young age are eating food that's mentally and physically addictive. And then as they grow up, that's all their body knows. They haven't gotten good eating habits through their life. So then we're at a point where now Eli Lilly's going to make billions off his drug because of the food system being broken. And I guess I think we need a radical look at like how society's ran and how people are becoming unhealthy because of society.
All right. Well, Weston, thank you for that call. And I think it's very appropriate that we got a call from somebody who's at the gym, clearly on a piece of exercise equipment during this show about this. But Dr. Stanford, this is something we just talked about a few moments ago, but the food industry and the food that we eat.
Yeah, I think that Weston brings up a certain point, but I think that he's missing the fact that this is a global pandemic. There is not one country in the world that isn't affected by obesity, and there's been a global increase in the rates of obesity in every single country in the world. And so if we're talking about this and we're looking at food and food systems throughout the world, we've seen this as an increase even in those countries that don't have the same food systems that we have here in the U.S. And so if we think about this as a multifactorial disorder where genetics, development, environment, and behavior all play a role in a person's likelihood of developing this disease, where food does play a role, we have to look at the role of genetics, development, environment, and behavior, and all of those components playing a role in the likelihood of a person's development of obesity. I encourage him to watch my lecture that I recorded, Obesity, It's Much More Complex Than You Think. It is 1 hour and 11 minutes, and you can go watch it for free. It's available for you to watch. And it is free. It's not behind a paywall. But I think that if you go watch that, you'll recognize that this is not just about the food system. And while that does play a role, it is much more complex than you think. And Dr. Narang, you are a nutritionist as well, correct?
I have a license in culinary medicine.
Okay. Do you have thoughts on this?
You know, I agree with Dr. Stanford. Food is certainly a large part of this. We are in a different world than we were in 1950, right? We rely on our cars. Our physical activity is much different. The way we live, the way we work, the places we live and work, it's a different world, right? And so when I agree, right? When we add in the processed food industry and all of those things, it all contributes. We're more stressed. We don't sleep enough. Like it's a whole, combination of issues.
We have to leave it there in terms of the calls for now, but Tolliver, we do have time for a quiz.
Shout out to Weston for setting this question up perfectly.
Okay.
So the quiz question is, what's the U.S. food banned most in other countries? I'm going to name 4 foods, okay? Instant mashed potatoes, Skittles, Twinkies, or Pillsbury biscuits. Feel free to jump in. When you got it, it's instant mashed potatoes, Skittles, Twinkies, or Pillsbury biscuits.
Twinkies. Doctors? I say Twinkies too.
I would have said the exact same thing. It's instant mashed potatoes.
Wow.
That is kind of disgusting. I think there should be real.
They just want the real mashed potatoes. They don't want the instant ones. That's the issue.
Twinkies aren't it?
They're third. Yeah.
I want to thank my guest, Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford, an obesity medicine physician at Massachusetts General Hospital and professor at Harvard. Dr. Stanford, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And Dr. Disha Narang, incoming director of obesity at Endeavor Health in Chicago. Dr. Narang, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Well, that's it for our Thanksgiving Encore episode. I hope it didn't keep you from eating your turkey. But on our next show, we are live again, taking a look at the loneliness epidemic in America, what's behind it, how it affects us on an individual level, and how to reach out and find a better sense of community if you need. We're going to be joined by activist and author David Jay, whose new book is called Relationality, and Reno, Nevada Mayor Hillary Sheevey. You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE, that's 844-464-3353, or write in at listentothemiddle.com, and of course, sign up for our weekly newsletter while you're there. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, John Barth, and Sam Burmas-Dawes. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Our intern is Annika Deschler. Our theme music was composed by Andrew Haig. Thanks to our podcast audience, our listeners on satellite radio, and the more than 420 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. Little trick I'm going to give you right here. Take that turkey leftover and turn it into a New Mexico-style green chili turkey tortilla soup. You're going to love it. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Talk to you next week.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
14 years in prison for killing a young woman. A 15-year sentence for a crash that caused 3 deaths. 12 and a half years for killing a child and critically injuring her mother. All true stories, all caused by marijuana-impaired drivers. No matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So, if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Saturday, May 2nd, country's biggest stars will be in Austin, Texas at our 2026 iHeart Country Festival presented by Capital One. See Kane Brown, Parker McCullum, Riley Green, Shabuzi, Dylan Scott, Russell Dickerson, Gretchen Wilson, Chase Matthew, Lauren Elena. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours before they sell out at Ticketmaster.com.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.